Welcome. You're listening to Sombra. This is not a place for screams. Screams end too quickly. Here, fear lives in the pauses, in the silence between words, where something has time to breathe. Every story you're about to hear could be fiction, or a memory, or the last clear thought of someone who stayed on the road just a little longer than they should have, and missed the moment when the road began to listen. If it's night where you are, don't look into the mirror too long. Reflections tend to linger when they realize they've been noticed. If you're wearing headphones, listen carefully. Not to the story, to the space behind it, to the breathing that doesn't belong to you. Settle in, turn off the lights, and remember, some stories don't end. They slow down. They pull over, and they wait until you arrive. I had been driving for 6 hours straight, the kind of night that doesn't grow darker. It simply goes numb, like the ringing in your ears after a hard hit. My headlights cut through the fog, but it didn't part, as if the road itself didn't want to be seen. The navigator was silent. The screen was still glowing, but the route had vanished, as if someone had erased it. I didn't think much of it. In places like this, signal is always the first thing to die. There was a road sign on the shoulder, old, crooked. Something was written on it, but the letters seemed to float, to shift, as if I were reading them underwater. I blinked, and the sign was already behind me. A minute later I realized I had passed it again. The same sign, the same dent in the metal, the same dirt at its base. I slowed down. My heart didn't pound in my chest. It jumped higher, closer to my throat. This can't be happening, I said out loud, just to hear a human voice. The radio clicked. First, silence. Then, breathing. Not static. Clear, slow breathing. As if someone was holding the microphone too close to their mouth. I reached to turn the radio off. And that's when I noticed the reflection in the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in the back seat. I couldn't see a face, only the outline of a head, too still for a living person. The glow of the dashboard lights made the figure look like part of the car itself, as if it had always been there. I didn't turn around. I have never been this afraid in my life. You passed it, the voice said from the radio. You always do. The car began to slow down on its own. I pressed the gas. The pedal sank, but the engine didn't respond. The speedometer needle trembled, as if it wasn't sure it was allowed to show numbers anymore. In the mirror, the figure leaned closer, and then I understood. This wasn't a passenger. This was the end of the road that had gotten into my car many miles ago. The car stopped on its own, not abruptly, as if someone had gently asked it to be quiet. The engine was still running, but the sound turned dull, as though it had been wrapped in thick cloth. The headlights were still on. There was no road ahead. Where the asphalt should have been, there was emptiness. Not a drop, not a forest, but something like a black space where the light died before it could reach any surface. I swallowed and finally forced myself to look into the mirror again. The back seat was empty. My heart didn't calm down. It got worse, because the feeling of presence was still there. "You already got out," the radio whispered. I was sure I had turned it off. "No," I said. "I would remember." Laughter, quiet, strangled, as if it hurt the voice to laugh. "You always say that." A car door clicked shut. Not mine, the back one. I didn't turn around. If there was one rule I had learned that night, it was this: never confirm someone else's presence with your eyes. Outside, the air smelled of wet metal and something sweet, like old hospitals. Somewhere nearby, a neon light was flickering. A gas station. I didn't remember seeing it before, but it stood there with such certainty, as if it had been there long before the road itself. The bell above the door rang when I stepped inside. The sound came late, as if the building first needed to realize I was there before reacting. There was no one behind the counter. The refrigerators hummed in unison, creating a low, constant drone that made my temples ache. On the shelves, expired goods with faded labels. On one of them, I noticed the date. 10 years ago. "There's no one here," I said out loud. My voice echoed wrong. The words came back with a different tone. "There is," someone answered behind me. I turned around. A man in a gas station uniform. An ordinary face. Too ordinary. The kind of face that's easy to forget because the mind refuses to hold on to it. "Did your car stall?" he asked. "No, it just stopped." He nodded as if he had heard this thousands of times before. "Then you made it." "Made it where?" The man glanced at his watch. It had no hands. "To the place where everyone gets out." That's when I realized there were no windows in the station, only reflective surfaces, and in every reflection I wasn't alone. I stood in the middle of the station and felt the space tightening around me. The refrigerators hummed louder, as if they were pleased that I had noticed the reflections. In the mirrored surface of the coffee machine behind me, people were standing. Not a crowd, uniformity. They looked like frames from the same surveillance camera, captured on different days. All of them were watching me. I turned sharply. No one. Don't like it? The attendant asked. He was standing closer than he had been a second ago. Then don't look. Who are they? My voice came out hoarse. He shrugged. Those who arrived and didn't leave. He smiled, but the smile came late, as if his face first had to figure out what it was supposed to do. You didn't leave either. The lights flickered. For a fraction of a second, everything went dark. When the lamps came back on, I saw a door that hadn't been there before. Narrow, paint peeling. A sign hung on it. Staff only. I didn't want to go in, which meant I had to. Behind the door was a corridor, longer than the gas station could possibly contain. The ceiling lights turned on one by one ahead of me, as if someone already knew where I was going. At the end, a room, chairs, old hospital chairs. On one of them I was sitting, not a reflection, not a double, me. Head lowered, hands on my knees, face grey, like someone who had stopped asking questions a long time ago. I wasn't breathing. This is after, a voice said beside me. I didn't even flinch. Fear was already tired. The attendant stood by the wall. You always sit here, he said, for a while, until you remember. Remember what? He looked at me carefully. For the first time, truly. The impact. What impact? The lights flickered and something clicked inside my head. Rain. Headlights from an oncoming car. Wet asphalt that suddenly felt too close. A sound, not loud, but final. I groaned and grabbed my head. No, I was driving carefully. That's what everyone says, he replied. But the road doesn't argue. It simply takes. So what now, I asked. Is this death? The attendant shook his head. This is the shoulder. And what's next? He pointed toward the door at the end of the room. It was slightly open. Light spilled from it. Too white. Some go on, and others. He looked at me, the one sitting in the chair. They stay. They help others stop. I understood everything at once, and with that understanding, something inside me went quiet. What about the car? The car will go, he said. Don't worry. With who? I asked. He smiled. With the one who already got in. From the corridor came the sound of a car door opening. That same click. I closed my eyes. I took a step toward the door of light and stopped. Not out of fear, out of understanding. Behind me, In the waiting room, the version of me in the chair lifted his head. Our eyes met for the first time. His eyes were calm, the kind of eyes people have when they've already accepted their role. You don't have to, the attendant said, but you already know the road. I looked back. The corridor had grown shorter. The lights no longer turned on ahead of me. They were waiting. If I go out, I began. You'll wake up, he interrupted. Somewhere, maybe, he paused. But every time someone drives too long at night, you'll hear this place. I understood then. The light beyond the door wasn't an exit. It was oblivion, and the shoulder was memory. Outside, a car door slammed shut. The engine started. Someone had already driven on. I walked to the chair, sat down. He stood up and vanished, the way reflections vanish when the light goes out. Somewhere in the distance, the radio clicked. Don't rush, my voice said. Calm, certain. That's how stops begin. I no longer felt the cold, only the road, and those who stayed on it for too long.